Hi everyone. If you couldn't tell from the title, this is part 2 in a 2-part series on how rice is harvested. If you haven't watched the first video, I recommend following the link that's up here on top of your screen, or check it out in the description below, and get up to speed on what we're talking about. Without further ado, let's get into part 2. In part 1 of how rice is harvested, we talked all about how rice is, well, harvested. The huge combine tractors cut the rice stalks off and bring the plant material in through a large spinning metal rotor that threshes the grain, stripping and knocking off the rice grain from the rest of the plant and spitting the rest of the inedible material out the back. The rice is stored in a large holding tank on top of the harvester and periodically is emptied into other tractors called bankouts for transport to waiting semi-trucks. There are 2 types of bankouts used in this process, the self-propelled bankout and the pull wagon. Pull wagons can hold more grain in their tank, but can get bogged down in mud much easier. Self-propelled bankouts can generally hold half the amount of a pull wagon, but are much lighter and have more engine power to get through fields that may still be quite wet. The bankout's job is to ensure the harvesters don't have to stop their work and can continuously keep threshing the grain. So they're constantly driving back and forth in order to take grain from harvester to the semi-trucks. Once full, the semi-trucks take their load of precious cargo to waiting storage facilities called bins. Bins can be either privately owned by the farmers themselves, or a large company-owned facility that dries and stores the rice for a fee. We have our own bins, so let's take a look at how ours work now.
So once rice has been harvested and taken away on a truck, it needs to be dry, because rice needs to be held at a certain level of moisture in it to keep the rice from spoiling. Essentially, if the rice is too green, has too much moisture in it, then the rice will heat up and spoil and turn essentially rotten. So you need some place to store the rice so that it can dry out and be held until it's time to be shipped off to the mill itself. That is what we have here, which is what we call the bins. The trucks drive in through here and then they park their set of doubles over one of these 2 pits behind me. And then there's these troughs that open up underneath of these sets of doubles on the trucks that are wrenched open and the rice trickles out into these pits. In these pits are augers that take the rice along, bring it up in a huge elevator, and then using gravity, drop it down, creating a pile in these bins. And then that's where the rice is stored, while it's also dried via fans. Now, if the rice is just way too green coming in, meaning we can't put it in a bin, put air on it, and dry it out over time, we need to run it through an actual dryer, which is this big piece of machinery behind me that is propane powered and slowly augers rice through it, blowing hot air through the rice to just dry out those rice kernels just a little bit more, put them into the bins, put air on them, call it good. So we have 2 elevators at this bins. This is the big elevator, which is just about 100 feet up in the air, maybe a little bit less, but it is a ways up there. Then we also have the smaller elevator, which goes up on this side, and you can see it's quite a bit shorter, but still not all that short at all. One of these elevators you can climb with stairs, the other one is a guarded ladder the entire way up. Yes, I have been up both of them multiple times. I go up multiple times a season. It's not fun. It's a little scary, to be completely honest. I'm not afraid of heights. You can thank farming and firefighting for that. I've been on so many ladders my entire life, but still, not at all my favorite thing to do. The one good thing that these elevators and having to climb up them is that it's a great view at the top. And you might be thinking, Tim, you should take us up there and show us how pretty the view is from up there. But if you think I'm going to climb all of these stairs just for a YouTube video, you're out of your mind. That's what we have drones for. Now, we were talking about drying the rice and using fans. And this is the size of the fans that we use for these bins. Underneath each single bin, the floor is actually kind of hollow, best way to put it, maybe. There's lots of metal slats, as you'll see when we go inside one of the empty ones, that are then propped up by pressure-treated wood, other metal pilings, anything to basically create a gap underneath the floor. And then the metal that the rice lays on has small little holes poked through it. So when these fans are on, they're blowing air through this kind of crawl space underneath the bin, that all that air then trickles up through all of that rice and dries it from the bottom up. So it's very important to have your rice nice and equally spaced out in each bin, which we'll see when we go inside. All right, so let's take a look inside one of the bins. Good for us, at least good for YouTube, is the fact that we've never really gotten around to finishing repairs on this bin. So this gives you a good idea of what the floor looks like in here. We have 2x4s that are all propped up, and then there's various metal, and then you have your metal floorboards over there that have little micro holes for air to go through. So believe it or not, you can zack this thing completely full and all of that rice will still be pretty well spread out. Never had a floor collapse yet. That's what the bottom interior of a bin looks like. And here's what a bin looks like with completely intact floor and no rice in it. All these holes right here have an auger that runs through it, and that's how when we start taking rice out of here, we pull it from the center first, right over there at the center hole, and then once we've got a full little cone all the way down, we open these up, and that brings all the rice out this way, and then we eventually start the auger, which will pull rice all the way from around the edges and into the whole center there. So that way we just slowly circle the entire bin into this auger, out through there, and out to go off to the mill. All right, so one of the last things I really want to show to you guys is how the rice looks inside the bins. But in order to do that, I have to climb a pretty tall ladder, and carrying up a very expensive camera and lighting equipment with me, I don't think it's quite a no-go. So I'm gonna throw on a chest-mounted GoPro, climb it, and give you a good idea of what it looks like in there. So give me just a second. All right, we are doing some first-person view farming right now. So this is the ladder we're gonna be climbing and going inside and show you guys what a rice bin looks like when it's pretty much completely full. Ugh. All right, so you can see right up there with all the glare, that is where the rice comes in, and here is our access hatch to get down into the rice bin. All right, let's turn on our light and descend into Chernobyl tanks over here. All right, here we are. Here is a full bin of rice. So, remember how this tank looked from down there, how tall it was? Yeah, almost all the way to the top. There is the spout, and that's how tall the peak is from the top. And all of this is rice. Straight from the field, run through a dryer, and then dumped in here. I'm trying to remember something from my physics class. It's galvanized. Hey, what do you know? That's magnetic. Holy smokes. Let's put this up here a little bit. All right. So I was gonna go climb to the top of it and show you guys what the peak looks like. But instead of a peak, we have a volcano. See that? I don't want to get any closer just because you never know. The last thing I want to do is drown to death in a grain tank making YouTube videos. Don't ever die for YouTube. Come on. But yeah, that's what Mountain of Rice looks like. And we have several bins almost as full or fuller than this one. going to climb back down. To reiterate on the whole drowning in grain thing, sometimes there are pockets that form of basically hardened grain that will collapse, and then you're essentially standing in quicksand. It's killed a few people before, quite a few people. I don't know of anyone that's happened, but I know a couple people that have fallen into grain. Well, I know a couple stories of people that have fallen into grain bins and drowned or nearly drowned. And I don't want to become one of them, even though I'm sure everything in here is completely fine. But again, never die for YouTube. Never die for content or clout. It's not worth it. All right, time to escape. Oh, sweet freedom. I need to start keeping track of how many times I go up and down these bins every year. It's often whenever it begins to rain or looks like it's going to rain, we gotta climb up here and close these roof hatches on every single one of the bins that we have rice in. And then we obviously have to open them up when it's time to start shipping rice out. So yeah, it is up and down these ladders a lot. Again, sorry for the bounciness. I left my good chest rig at home apparently. So using a magnetic one at the moment. Back on solid ground. Let's go back to the good camera too. Now once the rice has been dried and is ready to go to the mill, then we're kind of in the hands of whoever's milling the rice for us and then marketing the rice. It could be next week they're ready for us. It could be February. That's what time we shipped out rice last year. When they are ready for us, the trucks will pull right through here just like if they were going to dump. But instead, up on top of what we call the surge tank, which is a big holding tank for rice that we have a big pull-out lever that drops rice into the waiting trucks, and then they take that rice off to the mill to be turned into edible food, essentially. If you weren't aware, rice has something called a husk on it, which is all of this yellow that you see right here. And that is basically a paper-thin sheet that covers the rice kernel itself that is inedible and just grates against your teeth. It's awful. I'm getting chills thinking about it. So the mills have to remove that. They kick out all the bad rice using photoelectric eyes, and then they clean it, turn it into the rice you can buy in a bag at the store. I don't have access to a huge corporate mill to go through that whole process, but my dad did purchase a small mill to use at the house that we've been using to mill the rice that comes from our own fields. We've gathered about 3 commercial trash cans full of rice and been steadily eating it over the past year since we harvested it last year. Let's go take a look at how we mill the rice using our own personal mill to give you at least an idea of how the whole thing works.
The unmilled rice is poured into a holding tank on top of the mill that allows the rice to slowly trickle down into the mill itself, where the hull is removed by a spinning counterweight that my dad will explain in a little bit. The rice is then poured onto a sieve that oscillates back and forth several hundred times a minute, which causes all of the broken and damaged kernels of rice to fall through the holes and travel down a separate chute from all of the clean, fresh, whole rice that travels down the main chute into a waiting bucket that will then be packaged up and served for dinner, while all of the damaged and broken kernels travel down this left chute into a different bucket that we will then go pour into our compost. We don't particularly care that much about broken rice in our own food, but the marketers getting the rice from the mill do.
Now, how does this little plate thing work?
So first of all, it's all stainless and has these little cutter blades, or little milling blades. And that's where your heat is. So it goes around and mills the stuff, and the rice must have enough to go through those. That's chaff and stuff goes through there, and the blower blows it out. Whereas then the rice comes to the end, and then that thing keeps pressure to keep this thing full, so it's always full of rice as it gets to spring, and then it falls out here at the end.
Okay.
Those actually do the milling. with the combination, but it's gotta, you can see where it has to be full of rice
Yeah.
as it's going in there round and round and round.
This is just a smaller and much more simplified version of the mills used all across the world to process hundreds of tons of rice, probably an hour. And it's just nice to see how it works in our own little home, even though we definitely had some kinks to work out. While watching this all work though, I want you to take a moment and think about just how many inventions in human history are dedicated solely to spinning something and heating water. As I sit here and watch it and see just how simple it is, this machine to pull rice, and how it's basically just making things spin back and forth, it always fascinates me how much of our inventions come down to these two things.
All right, we have our freshly milled bag of rice straight from the farm. Let's go home and make something tasty with it. All right, so home from work, home from milling rice. How does red beans and rice sound?
Red beans and rice is one of my comfort foods. When serving in the United States Air Force and living in the dormitories as a young airman, we mostly ate at the DFAC, or Chow Hall. But military-grade food can get very old in a very short time frame.
Please, sir, I want some more.
What? What? Ask for more?
So a few of my buddies and I would often all chip in to make us a hearty home-cooked meal in the dorm kitchen instead. Red beans and rice with kielbasa was our ultimate go-to. Back in the day, we just used boxed mix and added meat to it, but now as an adult, making it from scratch is almost as easy. I like to slice the kielbasa into coins and then pan-fry them up. This caramelizes the meat and gives it a more roasted flavor than if you just tossed them in straight away. While the sausage cooks, prepare the holy trinity of any Cajun or Creole style dish, a 1:1:1 ratio of onion, bell pepper, and celery. I'm not a fan of the texture of onion or bell peppers, so I prefer to saute them together, which again brings out the caramelization flavor while also helping to blend them into the dish a bit more. While the veggies cook, get your rice water boiling. Don't do what I did, which is fill your pot like you're going to cook noodles. Remember, you're making rice, so you want a 1:1 ratio of rice and water. I used 2 cups of rice and 2 cups of water for this recipe. Additionally, I used 1 can of red beans and 1 can of kidney beans. I didn't mix the beans for any particular reason other than the fact I only had 1 can of each bean in my pantry. Start the water boiling and open your cans of beans. You can use dry beans if you want to, but remember to soak them many hours before dinner, or you'll do what I did one time and serve very crunchy red beans and rice to your girlfriend's family for dinner and then wonder why the relationship didn't work out. Once the water is boiling, add your rice and let it cook for a bit. How long? Who knows? Until it feels right. You'll be fine. It's rice. If you screw up boiling rice, I'm sorry, but you're beyond my help. Once the rice looks mostly cooked, dump everything else in. Season it with something heavy on the salt and pepper and stir for a bit. I prefer Pappy's or Sorry, Grandma, that's literally the name of the spice blend. Once pretty much all the liquid is cooked off, your dish is ready, spoon it into a bowl, add further spice if you need it in the form of hot sauce, and enjoy.
I gotta admit, it feels really good to eat a meal where I know the vast majority of it actually came from our farm and garden. It's always really wholesome feeling. But anyways, hopefully you've enjoyed this latest episode of Northwind Aerial, all about how rice is harvested, dried, milled, and cooked. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing. It really keeps me motivated to keep on making videos. But regardless, I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.